feels like you guys were musicians in a way that a lot of people back then maybe weren't. Does that make
Well,
sense?
all of us, yeah, it totally does. All of us, like, I think it's generational. Like, we didn't really have the ability. Like, you obviously know Joey, like, we wouldn't have been able to make a record that sounded like that without him in that era. We were just literally musicians, playing in VFW halls and churches and stuff like that. So our focus was not making like a cool sounding record. It was like playing shows, and the only way people liked you at shows is if you were good at playing. And all the guys in the band were kind of like from all these other local bands. Like, this was probably most of our like third or fourth band that we had all been in.
Okay.
So maybe that's part of it. Like, there was really no in, like, even Under Oath and stuff felt so disconnected from our reality that we weren't even aspiring to that. Where I do feel like that changed a little bit with us, where people are like, oh, I could really do that. We literally could not even picture that, playing music
Right,
for a
right.
living.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's easy to sort of forget that maybe by 2009, 2010, you could be big as a metalcore band, but when you guys were starting, you kind of couldn't really. Like that wasn't
no,
really an option.
if you were like Kill Switch or somebody, but they had radio success, and they were much more of like a rock
Right.
metalcore band. The stuff we were doing was much more focused on like a lot of the hardcore bands and like straight edge bands and stuff that we were playing with, and then just like putting keyboards and singing and stuff on top of those like beat down breakdowns and stuff. So
That
yeah,
Dayton
you
scene
didn't think
back
it was
then was
gonna.
fucking wild. How did
It
you
was
guys fit
crazy.
in with that?
We were so young that people were pretty nice to us. Like, I mean, we had some like crew beefs and stuff like that.
That
Not
shit was
really
no
our
joke.
fault, but yeah, it was scary. Cincinnati and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, it made you tough, I guess. And then we did this tour in like 2008, Sounds the Underground, with like Guar and Chimera and Etid and a bunch of other, like, Amon Amarth, and we got roasted like every day on that. So it just like that did thicken our skin, I guess, a little bit, just getting used to that.
Right. Well, you were one of the first bands to kind of change things up also. Like, maybe like 2011, like with Dead Throne and, kind of around
Hmm.
that era, that was actually kind of the peak of shitty, generic, like Christian metalcore bands. And that was when you probably could have made the most money and had the most kind of commercial success repeating that formula. But you guys had already kind of started to move away from it around then. Tell me about that.
Um, I think, we haven't always been the best with the business side, but I think in hindsight now, that's been a little bit of an asset, in that our primary focus was always like the creative side of it, and the shows and connection like to the fans. I think there was a couple years, like, I won't roast like any of our albums because people like them, and I don't like to talk bad on stuff that people like, but there's a few things I probably would have done differently. But it's just part of the journey. It's hard to criticize yourself when you actually were doing the best you could in that
Right.
time. I don't think we knew how um to do what you're describing, though, or we probably would have. We just we had been batting 100 for so long that I don't think we felt invincible. It was just we really didn't consider like, oh, something couldn't pop off if we liked it. So there's some good lessons in there, learned. And definitely, me personally, within the band, I'm much more focused, especially now, on like the marketing side of it. And like, once we have the songs done, like, how do we best put these out in the world in a way where people can absorb them the best, and not just, I mean, you have to be smart nowadays. You can't just like put a record out and hope people listen to it. That's just not really how it works.
Right. And, labels don't have the same kind of pull as they did 15 years ago.
Sure. Although I do kind of think, like, with any company of any kind, if it's your company and you own it, you have to be like on the ground floor with every decision. Otherwise, you're the last one who's going to be blamed for it. So
Yep. And no label's going to care about you as much as you care about yourself, no matter how good the
yeah,
label
it's
is.
impossible.
They
Yep,
just never will.
that's true.
Yeah. But I think that experimentation, even if some of it maybe didn't work out the way you wanted it to or whatever, I think that's why you guys have the kind of loyalty that you do now, because if you look at a lot of bands from, you know, your era, very, very few of them are still around now and are like respected in the way that you guys are.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we've always been kind of a fan first band and a live show first band. That's always been our sort of like core focus. And so even though we'll do some weird stuff on the records and stuff, if we play a song and it doesn't land, it's just probably out of the catalog in our mind from then on. But I do think, I don't know, I feel very connected to our fans. They have a lot of really personal experiences, and you can, you know, you hear that so many times, it does start to seep into you of like, people do take this stuff more seriously than you might. And so
Right.
you kind of do have a responsibility to, you know, I don't know, respect them, I guess, with